Hello, and in this video we're going to discuss what is the easiest and fastest way to get an instance of Sitefinity up and running in Azure really quickly. If you're a developer or a tester, you'll find yourself a lot of times need to create an instance of Sitefinity really quickly to test something in it. And we don't want to spend all the time every time to be able to go to Visual Studio and generate all the NuGet packages and test it and so on. I want something to be available for me, especially if you're a consultant working with a lot of different customers. It will take some time to do every single time when you need to create a brand new instance inside of Azure itself. So let's go ahead and take a look what is the easiest way to do that. And we will do that using Terraform and Github at the same time. So let's go for it. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a brand new project. We'll say new project. And it will need to be, of course, the ASP.NET Web Application.NET Framework, because this is the CMS itself. We'll say next. I'm going to go ahead and create something. We'll call it, for instance, Sitefinity with Git. How about that? And we'll put it on the E drive. It's fine. It has to be .NET Framework 4.8. And we will say, go ahead and create. We will make it an empty ASP.NET application. I'm going to turn off HTTPS for this demo. And we'll say create. And within a few seconds, we'll have a completely empty ASP.NET project ready for us right here on the right side. All right, it's done. And there we go. Now I need to turn this project into a Sitefinity project. And the way I usually like to do it is by going to Tools, and we will go to NuGet Package Manager. I'll open up the Package Manager console. And at the bottom in here, you can easily say install dash package, no spaces. And we'll say telerik.sitefinity.all. If you don't pass a version number, it will go into the NuGet packages repository for Sitefinity and will bring in the latest and greatest one. If you want a very specific one, you can add that at the end as well. For me, I want the latest one, and we'll say go for it. And right now it's actually using my package sources that is going to the nuget.sitefinity.com/nuget. And notice the latest version is 8.2.2.5.4.15.0. It could be a different version for you in the future as well. But we will give it a few minutes and it will install everything. And this project will end up being Sitefinity 15.0, 8.2.2.5 here within a few minutes. I'll come back after the system downloads all the NuGet packages and runs all the PowerShell scripts that will make this a Sitefinity site. All right, great. It took about maybe 4 to 5 minutes. It finished everything, and I ended up with an SF with Git project and a solution that has all the files that I need, all the folders that I need, and all, of course, the almost 370 different assemblies in the bin folder that are ready to go with the latest NuGet package. Okay. So the next portion is to be able to use this project and go ahead and create a repository into my GitHub repository based on exactly that. Notice there is no database, there is no license yet. I don't want to add that stuff right now. What I would like to do is in my repository in GitHub to have everything I need to be able to duplicate that in the future in case I need it really quickly. But I don't want to include a database or a license at this point. Make sense? All right, of course, adding this to GitHub, you can do it from any tool that you want. You can do it from the GitHub desktop. You can do it from GitHub itself. Of course, Solution Explorer here inside Visual Studio will allow you to do that. Notice there is a tab here called Git Changes. Let's click on that. And it will tell you there are no repositories right now in that folder. So I'm going to create a Git repository. Remember, this is happening locally on your machine. And the local path will be // wherever I decided to install this specific project. There will be a git ignore example. It's an important thing to use Visual Studio, okay? There are a lot of different things. I need that so that I do not have to bring into the GitHub repository my bin folder or my packages or object folders and all that stuff. So Visual Studio git ignore will take care of that. You can actually choose whatever license you want. I can add a README if I want to. And then I'm going to have to create my own repository on the other side, the remote repository. My account is called the Training Boss. I'm the owner of that. The repository name, we'll call it SF with Git. That's fine. And we can give it a nice description. And you get to choose whether you wanted to make it a private repository or a public repository. Let me go ahead and make it a public repository so that A lot of times when I'm training in a class, I can tell everybody to go into the public repository and just bring in an empty installation of Sitefinity really quickly without having to run through all the NuGet packages from scratch and so on. All right, let's go ahead and say create this and push it at the same time. And it will take a couple of minutes. It's creating all the stuff right now in here locally on my machine, and it will be ready to go ahead and commit all the stuff. And we will notice actually in Visual Studio 2022, it is still actually says master. If that offends you, please go ahead and change that to make it main. Also on the GitHub itself, you can change it in your organization settings that all the main branches will be called main as well. It is definitely up to you as well. So we will wait for all the stuff to actually get committed. The system is working in the background, and I'll come back in a couple of minutes when the entire project, of course, with respect to the git ignore, will be checked in to GitHub. And indeed, it took about 2.5 minutes. And now a new Git repository has been created in my own local folder, and also it has been, it is ready to go ahead and push it to the other side whenever I'm ready as well. And just to show you that everything has worked correctly, let me bring in my GitHub repository in here. I'm going to click on the repositories, and you will notice the latest one is SF with Git that I just did 1 minute ago, and we'll click on that. And you will notice that I have everything in here. There is no bin folder, okay? There is no package folder, but my git ignore is right there, my web.config, and of course the packages.config will be very important to have in there. So now other members of my team or students, for instance, in my training classes, can come in here into code, and you can clone this and bring in everything. And in Visual Studio, you'll open up the solution or the project and being able to restore all the packages coming in from package.config and automatically get all the stuff going really quickly instead of having to start from scratch in Visual Studio by running the NuGet package. It's a small thing, but it will help. But the next part is, how can I deploy this to Azure directly from this GitHub? And that's the part that a lot of times I find that I need, and I want to show you a trick to do that without using pipelines. Of course, I can do that by creating GitHub Actions, and I can actually use Azure DevOps for DevOps operations to create my own pipeline for the build and for the release. There is an easier way to do it without getting into pipelines at all, that we will be able to do this installation and go ahead and deploy it directly to an Azure Web App Service directly. All right, so let's go ahead and open up some kind of an editor to be able to write some text files, which we call it the Terraform scripts. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. Let me go ahead and bring an instance of that up. There we go. I'll bring it to this screen. And in here, I'll go ahead and want to create a brand new folder to create all the stuff in. So we'll say terminal, new terminal at the bottom. And in here, we'll go to the E drive. We'll say, let's go to the E drive. I'm going to say make directory, and we'll call it SF with Git Terraform. Sounds good. And we will go there, SF with Git Terraform. There we go. And inside of there, I would like to go ahead and start opening that folder in here. We'll say file, open the folder, and we'll go to my E drive again. We'll say take me to the E drive. And there is this Sitefinity with Git Terraform, and we'll say select this folder. All right, so at this point, I'm ready to go. There are no files, no folders, nothing inside of this folder, and we're ready to go. All right. First of all, I can do the whole job in one TF file in Terraform, okay? But I'm gonna actually split it up the way I usually like to do it. I'd like to create a main TF file that only contains the provider for Azure. I need to create another TF file, I usually call it Sitefinity, that has all the different pieces that needs to be created in Azure for Sitefinity. And I create a third file called the Sitefinity GitHub repo, and that's the one that knows how to connect the GitHub repo to my Azure installation right away. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one will be main.tf. And in here I'll paste in this code that you can get actually from the terraform.io website for register.terraform.io. It's just you need to say which version that you want. That is the latest one based on the time I'm creating this video. In your case, that might be a later version as well. And then don't forget to have a provider, Azure RM. This for Azure only, not for AWS or anything else. You have to have an empty features. A minimum has to be mentioned. Even if you don't have any features, it still has to be there as well. I'm going to say Control S, and this file is done. Now let's go ahead and create the three pieces that I need for the Sitefinity one. So I'm going to create another file. We'll call it sitefinity.tf. And again, you can call it anything you want. And let's start by creating a resource group. In Azure, we have to have a resource group, right? To start with. So let me go ahead and come in here and we'll do this. Oops, no, I don't want to do it in the Copilot. Thank you, Copilot. I'm going to remove this guy from here and we will go back Sitefinity and there you go. All right, so I'm going to say resource, and then it is the type of it will be Azure RM resource group, and then I can give it whatever name I want. I'm going to call it web app RG, and the name of it will be Lino web app RG. You can call it anything you want, and the location will be in the East US because I live on the East Coast of the United States. All right, that's the first piece. The second piece, every Azure web app has to have a service plan. So let me go ahead and create one really quickly, and I'll come in here, we'll say, please create me a type of Azure RM service plan. I'm going to call it app service plan. The name of it inside of the Azure resource group itself will be called Lino app service plan. All of these things could be variable, of course, and I recommend for you to do them as variables, but for right now, I'm just going to give you the concept only for Terraform. The resource group name, I'm not going to hard code it. I'm going to get it directly from this resource. So it's going to be Azure RM resource group. That's the name of the type. Dot the name of the resource group that I called it here in Terraform. And then we pass it dot name to get the name. So in my case, it will be Lino web app RG. I could have actually put a string, call it Lino web app dash RG to save some time. But this is a way to tell you it's a good idea to have variables and so on. We'll still put it in the location for the East US. The type could be Linux, could be Windows. In my case, of course, for Sitefinity, it has to be a Windows machine. And the SKU name, you have tons of stuff, free, basic, P1v1, P1v3, P2v2. It all depends on how much you want to spend. P1v2 usually is great to start with, whether you're in development or in testing. You might need something a little bit bigger for production, but even in production, we have some customers that don't have a very heavy need. This will be just fine for these machines as well inside of Azure. Sounds good so far? All right, the last piece, of course, now that I have a resource group and I have a service plan, I need to create the Azure resource for the web service itself. So let me bring it in here. It's called Azure RM Windows Web App. We give it a name, we'll call it Windows Web App, for instance, and the name of it will be Lino Windows Web App. That's fine. The resource group, again, will be coming directly from the first resource in this Terraform file, the location in East US. And then the service plan, I will do the same thing like I did before. I'm going to get it from up here by pointing to the type and the name of the resource.id. And then the site config is a required section in every single Azure RM Windows web app. So you cannot skip it. Even if you don't have anything to put inside of it, you have to have an empty one. In my case, I do actually need to have a section called the application stack. So the current stack will be .NET, and the .NET version is v 4.0, which will automatically in Azure will go to framework 4.8 at this point, okay? As a matter of fact, this is redundant. I don't have to do it because it's the default. If you say the current stack is .NET, and of course the choices could be .NET, .NET Core, PHP, things like that. But if you say .NET, you don't have to pass the second line, because if you don't pass it, it will automatically go to .NET version 4.8, okay? But I'm gonna put it in here just so you can see that we are 100% sure this is gonna be the case over there. Make sense? As a matter of fact, if I save this file right now, I can actually go ahead and run Terraform initialization. I can actually do the planning and I can do the apply, and that will create these resources. But the Azure web app will be empty, okay? It will be the sample that comes with every single Azure. What I would like to do is I would like to find out if there is a way for me to create the Sitefinity web app that I have in GitHub, that I checked in all my code for there. I would like automatically deploy this automatically into the Windows web app. So instead of doing this manually, it would definitely be nice to create another kind of resource. So and you can do it here at the bottom as well in this file, but I usually like to put it in my own file just to keep it clean. I'm gonna say, let's create another one. We'll call it GitHub repo, and we'll call it, again, you can call it anything you want. And inside of this file, I'm going to say resource Azure RM app service underscore source underscore control. That is the type, okay? And we'll give it a name. We'll call it source control. The app ID will be the ID of the app that's available from the previous section. So in this sitefinity.rf, in here, where did that go? Where did it go? Oh, there you go. There's Sitefinity TF right there. Let me make sure I can save all that before this guy as well. And finally, the Github repo will go ahead and say save. Okay, so they're all saved right now. And again, the second line for the application ID in here, I need to get back to my Sitefinity RF in here. I need to get the type dot the name dot the ID for the specific app. The important part is the repo underscore URL will need to point to where it is, and I got it directly from the GitHub website. It's github.com, my training boss / and it has to be correct repository. The branch is master. Again, if you change this to main, please do. Use manual integration equal to true is a good idea, and use mercurial equals to false, so it does not actually try to do anything with outside of GitHub. Again, the default will be true, so that's why I have these two in here as well. So we'll say Control S there, and now we have everything ready to go. And just to show everybody, if I bring in this my portal in here, notice I don't have any resource group based on what I told it to create, so we'll keep that handy because I'm going to get back to it later on to show you that it will create one for us. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring up a terminal, new terminal. I am in the correct folder, SF with Git Terraform. The first thing you want to do is to initialize the folder. You want to initialize the project that you just created. Okay, so the way to do that, we'll say Terraform init. And notice that we'll actually go find out from the main.tf which provider you're using, the 3.88. It will create a Terraform folder and bring in everything inside of there. And we are good to go. It's pretty good shape. The other part is you have to make sure that you are logged in. So you'll say an AZ login, and it will open up a website. You log in with your credentials to the Azure itself, so that when you're trying to create things from the command line, it automatically have access to that subscription that you would like to work with, okay? And in this case, I'm ready to go Terraform the plan, okay? We'll do a plan first just to make sure that everything will work correctly, and that will not execute anything in Azure. By running this, it will just go ahead and see all the resources that you have in all three files, main, Sitefinity, GitHub repo, or any other TF file in this folder. And it will try to create a plan based on that. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. We didn't use the out version. That's great. It will still create it. All right. We can, of course, create a plan with a specific TF plan file, but if not, it will create it for you automatically. And now we're going to go ahead and say, I would like to do a Terraform apply. And let's go for it. And when I do that, notice the Terraform TF state got created automatically for me. And first of all, it's going to tell me exactly what it's going to be executing. See all the green plus, it will say, okay, based on what I saw, you don't have a resource called source control, so I need to create all of these things. And you also don't have a plan, so I'm going to have to create all of these things. And you don't have a web app, so I'm going to have to create all of these things in your subscription and with all the site config. Including, of course, all the default things that I did not have to write, but it's part of the default, so it will have to do that. At the end, it will say there are 4 resources that will have to be created based on what you told me to. Alrighty? So I'm going to come in here, we'll say yes, we'll say please go for it. And now I'm going to go ahead and wait. Probably it's going to take about 45 seconds to a minute to access my my Azure portal. And being able to notice it's creating my resource group right now. And step by step, it will tell you what is it doing. Sometimes it takes a few seconds. Sometimes it takes 30 seconds. It all depends on what you're doing. And every 10 seconds, it will come back and will tell you if it's still working on that resource or not. So I'm going to stop the video right now for just a few seconds until it finishes everything. And I'll get back when the whole thing is done. And after a few seconds, you will notice here that the apply is complete. The 4 resources have been added into your subscription and everything was successful. Just to make sure that it was successful, let's go back in here. Notice it's not here yet. I'm going to refresh my resource groups. And there it is, Lino Web App RG, like I told it to. Let's click on it. We will see the 2 resources. There is the Lino App Service Plan and there is the Lino Windows Web App. Let's open up the web app. I want to make sure that it actually took exactly what I told it to do. It is a .NET 4.0, as you can see in here. There is the application. If I click on this application, I'll get the normal one because we didn't deploy yet. There is the regular one. I'm going to close this. And let's go to the configuration. and take a look that it actually listened to what I told it to. So we'll say general setting. Yes, it is a .NET. It's none of the other ones, Node or Python or Java or anything like that. And the version number is 4.8. That is correct. All of this information is correct for me in here. And of course, you have access to all of them directly from the Terraform if you need to. The important part here, folks, is that notice at the bottom in here, it says Deployment Center in progress. Right now, it's actually accessing my GitHub repository, is grabbing all the source code and is compiling it, believe it or not, and deploying it to replace the current website, which is the sample website. So this sometimes it takes about maybe 5-10 minutes or so to do the whole job because there is a compilation happening. But I didn't have to create a pipeline. I did not have to actually create a machine that does all the build or request a machine from Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions. The beauty of it is automatically going to be done for us automatically. So now if I go, for instance, to Deployment Center, I can see what's going on. If you'd like to notice my source control added my GitHub in here. The branch is master and it's doing all the job. If you'd like to watch what's happening, click on logs and you can actually see that it happened right now. I can actually see the show logs and I can actually monitor exactly what the system is doing. So I can actually see that it's actually right now restoring all the different NuGet packages from Microsoft and from Sitefinity, and we'll try to compile the whole thing. And when this is done, it's, like I said, it will take 5 to 10 minutes. You will end up, if you go to overview, and if you click on this link at the top in here for the default domain, you're going to end up getting a Sitefinity website. Then the first thing it's going to ask you for is the license. And once you add the license, the next one will add you to add a database, because we've never decided on a license or a database. But this is the beauty of this. So now you can tell every time I need an instance, what do you think I'm going to have to change? The only thing I have to change is going to Visual Studio Code in here. And I will need to go to my Sitefinity ESF, and I just need to change my resource group, my location, and pretty much that's about it. And run the Terraform, apply again, and it will create a brand new instance. Just give it 10 minutes, go make a cup of coffee, and you'll get an Azure instance of Sitefinity running without having to create NuGet package, nothing. So this can actually make it much easier. So if I have a class with 10 people in it, I can run this 10 times and can actually create this using a counter of 10 times. And after the 10 times this running, all my students will have, each one of them will have a completely different installation of Sitefinity ready to go for Azure. We can use it for 2 or 3 days during the class, and I can destroy it at the end by coming and say Terraform destroy, and it will remove all the resources as well. Hopefully this was useful to see how you can actually deal with Sitefinity from inside of a Terraform and GitHub at the same time. Thank you.